I'm number one. I'm number one. I'm Ronald Reagan.
War is imminent, but so we're going to forget about World War I and World War II and World War III and just talk about World War I. I mean, who cares about World War III?
World War I.
World War I.
I won World War I. I want to win World War.
Why did you win World War I?
Well, we won World War with England and France. We're number one, aren't we?
I'm number one. I'm Arabia, and I'm coming up as number
You're Arabia.
one.
I thought you were Russia.
No, I'm coming up as Arabia.
Oh, well, wait.
Nice.
That's not the story. The script is that Russia wins the. No, America wins the war. I'm actually pretty confused. Well,
we're just going to talk about the past.
We're going to talk about the future.
This was the past. World War I was.
No, we're going to talk about the future. I tell you. Anyway, here we are in the present, America.
What happened to Arabia? It's not even there anymore.
And bombs Russia, which bombs America, which bombs Russia, I guess. Is that right? Or is there another story?
Well, we're going to forget about the bombs, about them bombing each other.
That's not part of the script?
Forget that. What we're concentrating on is going over to Arabia, which is what everybody is busy bombing over. That's their new storyline.
Oh,
we're bombing over,
right. That is
over Arabia.
That's what the headlines are all about.
Right. Let's bomb and get the oil. Who cares if we even bomb it, because we can still get it from the bottom of the earth, even if there's no more land on top. We can still get the oil from underneath, get rid of the people. There are no buildings to even blow up there because they don't even have too many buildings.
Well, now, oil. I thought that Rockefeller invented oil. Doesn't Rockefeller invent oil? It's an American invention.
But we gave it, it wasn't invented by him.
Well, he found it. I mean, he made companies out of it. Rockefeller Center?
So it's time for a new business.
Oh, well, I thought Rockefeller Center was pretty good. Now, it is true that Rockefeller was almost a Russian. Or rather, there was almost a Russian Rockefeller. You know that Moscow and Istanbul could have been the big powers of the world? Well, we could have had...
about the Russian Rockefeller.
Well, there was a guy named Gulbenkian. A guy named Gulbenkian in Russia. And that was in the time of the Tsar.
Well, Russia and the Rockefeller.
Yes, well, actually, if Russia had not had a revolution, then the Tsar would have had all the oil in Russia and all the oil in the Middle East, because he would have had a special connection with the then Ottoman Empire, or Turkey, and all of Arabia. So that, you know what?
We wouldn't be having to fight a world war right now, because
we'd be so
Russia
poor.
would be in control. There would be no America. We would just be the Soviets of America.
Right. The best thing that ever happened to the U.S. was the Russian Revolution.
Was communism.
Right, because it got rid of Gulbenkian, the Russian Rockefeller.
We're Slavs now. We have Rockefeller capitalism.
Yeah, I mean, they're poor Slavs. They turn to socialism. They think that socialism will save them. And meantime, they get rid of their Russian Rockefeller. And our Rockefeller takes over the Middle East.
What does that have to do with World War III that's coming up, creeping out upon us?
Well, I guess we always assume that somehow it's communism versus capitalism, but it's really just Russia versus America. And we almost lost in the very first place.
About oil.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe it won't be about oil. I mean, after all, oil's going to run out. And then, if you have no more oil, how can you have a war? At least about oil.
There will be no reason for any more wars. The only war that was ever fought was over oil. I think people like to...
Only war ever fought over oil? I've heard about wars over...
They just like to do stuff together.
Well, wait, oil's like tar, right? How about wars about feathers?
Where's our tar feather war?
We're gonna have a feather war pretty soon.
We have an invention instead. I want you to talk about the invention instead of oil in Arabia.
Yeah, right. We're gonna mine soil, not oil. Now, what will really happen is that...
I want you to do this slow and clearly.
Oh, okay. Thank you for the cue. But you're a Russian. How can I take a cue from you?
Because this is for the benefit of all of us. You're going to help us.
Oh, you're a global citizen?
No Russia. Yes, we are.
Oh, yeah.
We just want to have a lot of gas and a lot of energy for all of us. We can live happily ever after. We don't have to fight or die.
You mean we don't have to have Rockefeller all the time?
No.
Rockefeller Center goes obsolete? Gulbenkian Center goes obsolete? We don't need the Russian Rockefeller? This is Lugas. Lugas is a... he's not quite a Russian Rockefeller. He's an Austrian diplomat. Now,
none of this has been heard. This has just been like...
This here, having a close-up, this here is what will replace the Rockefellers and the Russian Rockefellers and all the other oil powers.
Looks just like them, don't you think?
This? No, this is an offshore rig. This is called a soil well, not an oil well, but a soil well. It upwells the soil that has accumulated off the shores of the seas, and or off the shores of the various land masses, and then grows lots of seaweed, and the seaweed becomes the main source of renewable energy for any society. Now, for example, the Audubon Society is preparing a plan for the United States for energy And it says that biomass, including seaweed, would become the major source of energy in the future if we have renewable sources. So that this seaweed rig, which basically is taking advantage of the fastest growth of life on Earth, would collect nutrients or soil very, very rapidly using solar energy, and would then be collectible, harvestable to yield methane gas or a non-polluting fuel. So we don't have to have oil anymore, we can have gas.
Right, and what's important about it is that you don't have to worry about oil being found somewhere, that you can produce this very quickly, you can produce it anywhere as long as there is clean earth that comes down from the rivers into any part of the water. So each landmass, I've learned this very well, each landmass can take care of its own water system and its own land system and then produce it and take care of its own area.
You mean to say we would have to rewrite the map of the world? We could plan everything by just water systems.
As it's supposed to be.
Right. I mean, just, of course, basically you have water flowing here or water flowing there, and you look to see where the water is flowing.
Everywhere water went.
Now, for example, I just think about what's happening in the Arab world, where they don't have much water, but they have a lot of war. And instead of having war, they could have plenty of soil wells to get the water cleaned up and circulated.
But they don't have any soil, they just have sand.
Well,
so
no,
you need soil to get into the water so that you can build these things.
Here we go.
How do you have...
See where the war zone is? That's the Persian Gulf, or the Arab Gulf. Now all that water is real rich in oil and also real rich in soil. And they could have soil wells to replace the oil wells, and they could have plenty of nutrients and then plenty of methane gas, and that would take care of all the Arabs in the area.
So they just have to be convinced to build them.
Sure, well that's very simple. These rigs
and they would be convinced to build them because within 5, 10, 15 years there will be no more oil anyway, so they really should get started on it right now.
But they have plenty of soil there.
And they have plenty of money to invest in it also, because they're making money from the oil.
But that means that for America, which is worried about the Russians, they can have a strong Arab state that's shaped sort of like this.
Not the Americans. The Arabs can have their own state.
Oh, well, I'm an American. I like to have other countries work for us, you know? I mean, we're users. We're USers. And we make sure they work for us.
But the Russians are going to want it too. What's going to stop them from wanting to grab the land? Why are they going to be autonomous when we're not? Why do why don't they want us? They always want everything too.
We
want everything. You want everything. I want everything.
You mean we can't be number one? We have to just be like everybody else and
we all have to be number ones. Yes.
All number ones.
Yes.
Never is it one?
One.
They all win the war?
Yes, it's like, yeah, we all win. Okay. We all have what we need. We all have oil, we all have gas, we all have food, we all have fun.
We don't have any more oil, we have gas.
We have gas, no more oil.
We get the soil wells
oil
and
is
gas.
bad anyway.
And oil gets you, everybody get cancer and gets you diseases and polluting. I mean, Frank Sinatra's doing a big benefit about cancer. I mean, he's silly because the real cause of cancer is all the oil.
I need something to drink.
The Russian Rockefeller and the American Rockefeller. Can we have a drink here?
Water.
No, we need water because after all, we're thinking about the desert and we're all going to dry it out.
So that's the end of this, except that we wish to...
This would be the Arab autonomy, I guess, or the autonomous Arabian autonomy.
And what are they going to teach us now that they're autonomous? What are they going to do?
Well, they're going to set an example for the rest of the world. I mean, I can see Russia begin to organize a Caspian Sea system.
Yeah, once they see that it works.
Right.
That they don't...
There's a Black Sea system, and there's a Baltic Sea system. All of a sudden, the Polish question gets resolved.
So the Arabs really are the future.
Well, they set the pace. They figure out how we're going to have soil instead of oil as our new basis of economy. And we all get lots of gas. Thanks for the drinks.
Thank you.
To that, for soil.
A bright future, clean water.
And clean gas. But I understand that we have to really start someplace else in the world, perhaps in the Far East. Isn't that true? I mean, I read, to give an example, here's a headline I just found in the New York Times. It says, Canada's end is imminent. Western provinces bid Alaska and Japan join new prosperity sphere.
Where is
now, this is, I guess, from the New York Times, I find.
Maybe we should bring this up a little.
Sure, up closer to the camera.
Oops,
well, I can read from the Times of late, and it says that British Columbia has decided to withhold a tax from Ottawa. It goes on to say that British Columbia has declared itself to be a Western province that just doesn't want to do it anymore with the government in the so-called country of Canada. And it seems as if the end of Canada is near. And it goes on to say that Western provinces have all kinds of separatism, and they're growing with the idea that somehow they want to just connect up with, for example, Alaska. Now, think for a moment. In the bloodless war, which was really what we're talking about, like the change from oil to soil.
A real revolutionary war.
Yeah, a revolutionary war that has nothing to do with the war at all. Just peace.
A new idea of revolution.
Sure. Well, like a round-and-round revolution. Like this
just
soil
teach
rig,
each other
round
about
and
a new
round.
pleasant way of living.
Well, thinking about how things go round and round.
Which is what Japanese would really be doing.
Yeah, with the Japanese, for example. Now
they already understand about a pleasant way of living.
They have a current that goes like this, and then the current goes round, and comes down. And it goes round and round and round. Then it also comes over here, and then around there, and then down into here, and then up like that. So you have around here, around here, around here, and around here. Now all these round and rounds are their water systems. Funny thing is that the British Columbians tie into that, as do the Alaskans, and as do part of the Russians, and as do part of the Chinese, all the way over to here. So we could have all of this be one big Japanese Sony land, because they would use Sony TV monitors from space to look at the whole thing as one gigantic round-and-round circulation system. Now that would be a soil system, soil circulation through the water, and have nothing to do with oil, which is what we're trying to rely on, or have been trying to rely on now. Doesn't that mean that Japanese would stop being warmongers?
Well, they have to teach the people. They have to come over there and teach them that it's a reasonable thing to do, why they should join forces with these people to come over and take their land.
I mean, like the Japanese would actually expand? I mean,
because it looks like expansionism, which looks like war, and people are going to say, I'm sorry, this is my land.
I mean, this is Japan
you can't
here,
come
right?
in here. This is little Japan, and they're going to come and they're going to take over all of this.
They can take over all that? Well, I was thinking about British Columbia joining up with Japan, not Japan joining up with British Columbia.
Well, British Columbia would really like to join up with Japan, I think, because there are a lot of people that are really interested in the Eastern way of life over there. They've been practicing it already. All the hippies are over there.
You mean Japanese hippies?
Yes. No, then there are Western Canadian and Americans that have moved up to there because
like
the land
Pacific
is lovely.
Northwest?
Yes.
Too, yeah, that's right. Yeah, the current goes like that. It takes up Portland and Seattle. They're all kind of, they're on a different head trip. I mean,
yeah, so they should really go to their homeland, which is really Tokyo.
Oh.
And Tokyo is really, in a way, sort of like a New York City. I mean, it's terribly polluted, and they're sort of losing their idea of what Japan was really about, an aesthetic way of life. So they really need to go over. I mean, they'll probably go over to British Columbia and to the Alaskans to realize that quiet way of life again and meditate with the land and relax.
I mean, they won't start exporting cars so much?
They'll get really bored with making cars. I mean, they in their history, they have a much better way of life than being stuck in the factories, building one lousy car after another that fall apart. I mean, the idea that they think that Datsuns and Toyotas are great cars, they're pieces, excuse me, they fall apart very quickly. They're just little, that's all.
Well, we should have you talk to Ronald Reagan. I mean, I'm an American diplomat, and I think I'm going to have you talk to Ronnie, because we don't want to have the Japanese selling cars. We want to have the Japanese selling
aesthetics.
Peace.
Selling aesthetics.
Right.
You know, I mean, they have a lovely way of dance. They have lovely architecture. They have beautiful music. I mean, they can go to the Alaskans and practice doing carving again. I mean, the Alaskans haven't even allowed to even make their carvings anymore. They're just brought into the oil fields also.
And we don't have no more oil at all. We have all these soil wells, right? So we have soil wells all over this new country. That'd be real aesthetic, right? Sony land. You have plenty of TVs up in the satellites.
And since the TVs are already there,
right,
they can just go in there and teach the Alaskans how to make videotapes and teach and videotape the performances in British Columbia, and therefore perhaps teach the rest of the world what the hippie idea was about anyway, which wasn't so disgusting to begin with.
The Arabians were doing something like they're teaching the rest of the world too. I mean, you can say that the Arabians are going to teach us something, and the Japanese are going to teach us something, and the British Columbians are going to teach us.
We have a lot to learn. I mean, listen.
I thought we knew everything. We're number one.
We just know how to make money, but we don't have like an aesthetic way of living, and that's what we really could use. It's something to do in our relaxed time. I mean, we're supposed to be making relaxed time so we can commit suicide when we relax and think, oh my God, all I can do is sit and watch TV.
Well, that's true that with all this oil pollution, we certainly do commit suicide. I mean, it's pretty dangerous. I mean, besides the nuclear pollution.
I mean, people's lungs are poisoned.
And the coal pollution. And with all these soil wells,
anyway, pretty soon we're all going to be freezing, and then people are really going to be committing suicide or frozen to death like they are freezing already in New York City.
Well, yeah, but we don't have to have that happen. We can have soil wells, make a lot of methane gas, and we all stay warm. And no pollution at all.
And we definitely need to do that in the next 15 years.
And it'd be really aesthetic.
We will all be
we
freezing
could contemplate
to
it from the air.
It's freezing here right now.
I know, it is pretty cold.
Just because this is a very poor TV station.
Well, if they had Sony land subsidizing this TV station, there'd be no more poverty here. They could have plenty of heat. We'd have Sony land, which is this new country, right? I mean, the Japanese take over and make it into TV land.
Right.
Everybody gets to watch TV, they get to see their land, and they have a pacified Pacific. Now, we could even extend the pacified Pacific a little bit along the lines of World War II. I mean, God forbid that maybe we were wrong to fight the Japanese in World War II.
What's ever happened with Indonesia?
I know,
who's down there?
Well, you know what? I read a book, a Harvard monograph, that said that one of the major causes of the war with Japan was not, for example, Pearl Harbor.
Isn't that
It was
shocking?
some American oil companies and British oil companies getting together and saying that they were going to prevent Japanese business people from having any kind of oil company activity in Indonesia. So it's like saying to the people who live here, you can't mine your own oil. Now, that was in the days when we used to have oil. But nowadays, when we have soil wells, of course, you can mine your own soil. It's simple enough. You just have a soil well and you get it. But to think that then, World War II resulted largely because, well, I hate to say it, American imperialists.
You better think of another way of saying it.
Rockefeller advocates felt that it would be a bad idea for Japanese to do their own business down there. And now maybe it's time for the Japanese and the Chinese and the Thais.
Well, we never did anything with
all the people to
Indonesia
get together.
anyway. Why didn't they want them to go to Indonesia? Do we have anything to do with Indonesia?
Well, we wanted all the oil there. I mean, we had the idea.
Do we
of the
use it?
Rockefeller
I mean,
land.
do we have oil wells down there?
Oh yeah, we have lots of them. Amoco has oil wells there, and Phillips has oil wells there, and Chevron, Mobil has oil wells there. They all have oil wells there.
And what's the culture down there? Headhunters?
The headhunters?
Are they still down there?
Oh, we don't care about I mean, Americans don't care about the headhunters. Americans don't care about anybody. They only care about oil.
2 microphones?
Well, you know, what I'm saying is so important, it's just got to get on the air. But it is true that, I mean, if World War II was that way, then maybe we ought to think about World War II. I mean, what would provoke people to go and bomb Pearl Harbor? Maybe there was something going on with us against them.
What was their reason to begin with? There was no reason.
Well, they were upset about the fact that they couldn't even use their own terrain.
But we got nothing out of it. There was no reason that they bombed it other than they just bombed it, and we never...
Well, bombing may not be a very viable way. Look, after all, they lost. They had an atomic bomb drop on them just for bombing us. I mean, can you imagine? They go and they shoot up a few sailors, they get an atomic bomb.
It's amazing.
That's not very fair,
it's amazing
is it?
Japan hasn't started making bombs of their own.
Well, I think they're going to follow the
Jap-
Italian example, as we'll learn pretty soon in the show. Right? The
Yes,
Italians know how to
yes,
really
it's
make
coming
great
up, but
missiles.
not quite yet.
Yeah,
Because,
well, you can watch.
Because Japan, that's why Japan is going to be, exporting aesthetics, because they are not, the people are not interested in warfare out there.
Really,
That's
yeah,
why
they don't
they're
like
not
war.
into
I mean,
TV.
they
I mean,
blew
they
the war.
understand it. I mean, we should listen to them. That they are, I mean, they have the money to do it. They have the money to be making the bombs. They have the money to be threatening all the time. But they never do because they really know about it.
Well, you know, it's funny. The Japanese, when they tried to win a war, lost all the time. For example, here, they really wanted this terrain in the first place, this
Mongolia.
Sony land. Yeah, well, they fought the Russians in 1939. They got wiped out. They got wiped out real bad. And that wipeout led them to decide, okay, now we're going to have to try to get oil or something down here.
Here, Russia,
Now,
American.
Yes, I mean, they were basically
they
caught
were
in the
fighting
middle
with
between
Russia, so they were
America
fighting with
here
us.
and Russia here, and their little plans to kind of do a little bombardment on each other. And here they are in the middle, and they end up being a little intermediate battleground.
So we were going to give, America was going to give Japan Alaska, and Russia was going to give Japan Mongolia.
You mean Siberia, too?
And Siberia, too.
Part of Siberia, I guess.
Yes.
The far eastern part, Vladivostok. Hey, well, you know,
To
that'd
make
be a
a
great deal.
new state.
You know what? I think the Japanese ought to get together with the Russians and make an offer to Alaska, which doesn't really want to sell oil to the U.S. anyway, and doesn't want to be possessed by the U.S. government. That, okay, we'll make a trade deal. We'll give...
Balance.
Yeah, right. The Russians will sell this part of Russia, just like, remember how they used to sell Alaska? They'll sell this part of Russia to the Japanese, and they'll make sure that America loses Alaska.
And we'll be very happy to give it to them.
Well, I mean, after all,
if they give a part of theirs, well, you know.
Right. I mean, we figure.
we don't really
we're
need the oil in Alaska anyway because it's sort of dead, and America is going to be anyway by that time.
10, 15 years, right? I mean,
Doing their soil wells
they're really
too.
happy with their soil wells, and they have all that nice non-polluting energy. But with the pacified
Who's selling
Pacific,
these soil wells anyway?
you know, well, here we are. I guess it's time to get on to just showing how the Sony land can then be spread all over the place, because they'll have Sonys here, then have Sonys down here in Indonesia showing all the headhunters, and we'll have a diversity of culture again. People can say, well, maybe I'll grow up and become a headhunter.
It's great to be in the world because there's so many different cultures going on. It's not just
right, not
New
just all
York
Western
Coast dying,
multinationals and all that kind of stuff, international style
it's not the end of the
architecture.
world. I mean, there's a lot of new frontiers around, as we've been showing you. A lot of new frontiers.
Of anthropological avenues. But now, what about the Italians? Now, they lost World War II. And some of my Italian friends think that they can win this next war, but they don't want to do it by anything except bloodless war means.
Bloodless war.
Can you imagine an Italian doing bloodless war? Well, they
they're
can't
sort
seem
of
to win any other kind of war, so they're going to have to win. They have to do something with a bloodless war.
Well, they're sort of like a young state in a way. I mean, they've gone through so many. They've gone through the Renaissance. They've gone through the Baroque. They've gone through sort of destroying their culture, and they've got to the point where, in fact, they're like the most destructive country. I mean, they see Venice going, they see their whole art history going, which is what their country has been going.
All the oil pollution made
all
out
the
Venice.
pollution from
yeah,
the cars
right.
and
Well,
from the oil.
All that
so
Renaissance
they are,
art
in fact,
gets wiped out by oil.
and they're
art
learning
has
as a
nothing to do with
result.
oil at all. The Japanese know that art, like video art, has nothing to do with oil. Can make soil. And then the Arabs
But wait
art.
a minute. But there is a point because
What?
because Italians have learned that through seeing Venice being demolished, right? They are really struggling all on their own to save the Western art history, culture, civilization.
Oh, the history of art?
So,
that's right, the history of art. I can remember all the great Italian pictures in the history of art.
right now in the news we saw that
Sure.
one of the riders and the horses have been disemboweled from each other, and for 3 years now, one of the
boy.
horses in the Roman Forum is being sent to be re-equipped because he's being so disintegrated by all the pollution
All
that
the
it's just
oil.
filled with holes.
Well, you know how
So-
it is.
So Italy is going to then send all of its pollution and all of its crap garbage out, but how?
Well, you're
They're
an Italian,
going-
Mama. You ought to know.
How we're going to do it is that we are going to build new elements,
New missiles?
new missiles. I happen to have a few right here. As you'll notice, by these lovely missiles, not the missiles that we've known about before. I mean, we all happen to love missiles, don't we? We love the aesthetic of missiles. We love their long shape. We love the power, the strength of them, the way they just head up into the air.
Those
just
are
like
American
we'd like
missiles,
to go.
aren't they? I mean, how are they Italian missiles?
They're Italian missiles because they're aesthetic, because they're beautiful, because they're decorated,
You mean
because
our
they're not.
missiles aren't
We don't. I
good-looking?
mean, who knows what a missile looks like? Do we ever see our missile size? Have you
Well,
ever
these
really
are
seen a
different, I
missile?
must
We see
say.
it. We
They don't
never
even
see
have
a
any
missile.
tops, or do you?
I know they're in the middle of being made.
Oh, okay. Well, the Italians are always in the middle of making things. They don't ever seem to quite finish them, do they?
Well, that's because they're always having strikes.
Oh, yeah. Well, they are pretty lazy. But, maybe being lazy is a good idea.
They're sort of relaxed people. They want to have
yeah,
a good
right. They're just
time.
laid back.
I mean,
That's why
they're
they can't
having-
win wars.
Well, they're not interested in having wars anymore. I think they're interested in having a good time. I mean, they just want to eat, don't they? I mean, they have bad meat over there, and they just want to eat good meat. So how are they going to make good meat?
Well, I heard the story that they were planning to have missiles get meat. Now, figure that one out.
Missiles into meat.
Well, something like that. Now, I guess the story is like this. You have an Italian mama and you're an Italian mama. And your Italian mama says, well, I've had it with all this pasta and spaghetti. And what we-
Rolling out pasta day in and day out. Italian meat is lousy, and the upper class eats meat. But even the upper class doesn't have good meat. Why? Because the land is lousy over there.
Well, wait,
Yes.
in Italy that's true, but what about the rest of the area around Italy? Now, there was once a Roman Empire, right? And the Roman Empire said that the Mediterranean Sea was his home sea. Now, the Mediterranean's falling apart because of all the pollution. But what drains into the Mediterranean? How about the whole, Sahara?
The Sahara.
Look at all the
They're
animals they
going
used
to
to have
go
in
to the
Sahara.
Sahara Desert.
Right. I mean, they used to have animals in the Sahara, so why can't we have a Sahara Renaissance? I mean, they had an Italian Renaissance. Now it's time for having a Sahara Renaissance.
They're going to take their cue from Israel.
Oh, that's right. Well, there was a scheme developed in Israel for having all the waste converted into feathers. And then they're going to drop the
You're
feathers in
missing
the
a
land.
point.
And the
You're
feathers will be
missing
taken up by the
a
animals.
bridge.
What am I missing? We're going to create, here in Israel, right? They take all the waste.
They turn the desert into green.
Right. Well, they do that
That's why
by...
everybody was so jealous of them, because they made it back into the Fertile Crescent again. And we're going to have a Fertile Crescent in the Sahara Desert.
I mean, all this will become green again? Here, I got to get the
well,
green
a
marker.
good portion of it. I mean,
I
we're
know
going to leave
this
a
is black
little
and
for,
white, but this is green. Sahara becomes green.
Isn't that amazing?
All
those
this
beautiful
becomes green
sands
again?
of wastelands where
All
there's
because
no
of the
food, because the
Italians?
Italians need meat. We need food. They like to hunt. They like to wander.
And just think, it'd be like the Italian flag. Red meat, plenty of red meat,
on top of
green land.
grass.
Now, how are they going to do that? Well, I guess they're going to have
By
to demarcate
sending
missiles.
missiles filled with the garbage of Italy that's going to go into the Sahara Desert.
That's right, they're
Spread it with feathers and with their wasteland, and it's going to breed then.
What's
It's
going to
not
breed
going to be
animals?
dangerous.
Well, I guess one of the scenes I saw was something like this. They take the waste and they make feathers out of it, and then they drop it on marshes that kind of look sort of like this, I guess. I mean, here's a marsh, imagine an Italian marsh. Here they are, Italian marshlands. And then it's sort of, I guess, let's see, how do the feathers look? They look like this coming in from the air, and they come up off of,
Close up.
those are the Italian missiles, right. missiles for millions. Right, millions of
Missiles
animals.
for millions.
All
Not
these
dangerous missiles.
all these animals.
Remember
you see
that.
These, this is an aerial shot. Italians are really good in aerial photography, and we have an aerial shot here of all the animals that start populating the Sahara Desert. The Sahara Desert turns into a big animal paradise, and of course we have to eat the animals. After all, we have to keep everything under control and make natural order happen, right? So why don't we have some maybe Italian meat for once?
God,
Instead of having
thank
this
God,
Italian
I'm
pasta.
so hungry.
This is all wild meat, you know. This is
But right now it's just cheap meat.
no, this is pretty wild.
But it's cooked like Italian style. Oregano, garlic, thyme, basil.
Now, what's in these things again? This is these have feathers.
It tastes disgusting cold.
That's what you get for having a TV studio. Now, just
like
think for a
one?
moment. We have Italians making wild meat and hunting them with military techniques. So they send missiles out from the land. Now, listen, how does that look? Okay, we got all the Italians,
This is poison.
and then all the Europeans have all this waste, right? And they convert it into feathers, and then put the feathers inside the missiles, and then they send the missiles with deadly accuracy to marshes like this, right?
Marshes like that.
There we go.
What is this marsh?
And
Right.
that's the New Sahara Marsh, and
This
they
looks like a
drop missiles
painting.
all over these points, sort of like little, I don't know, pimples or something like that, little dots, specks.
They do it,
all over.
of course, aesthetically again, like a picture.
Oh, I was thinking I was being very clinical about it. I guess it's because I'm an American and we're kind of obsessed with having diseases, Rockefeller diseases like cancer, which, come from oil.
I guess
So-
because I'm a girl that I'm interested in aesthetics.
Oh, and art. Well, the Italians were always interested in art. They really never got into the Rockefeller trip. But, okay, so they dropped the missiles all over the place, and they created a big network, right? A big network, pathways, all over the Mediterranean area.
Food for millions.
Yeah, and missiles for millions, too.
And people can wander through the green grass again. And they can
Well,
go
they
to
have to watch out
Indonesia.
for the wild animals, however.
Well, after a while, we're going to be starting to make grain anyway. We don't need to have too many wild animals. Anyway, we just want little animals so that they're not too dangerous for anybody.
Oh, but I like big animals. We could have some big animals some places and littler animals other
Just
places.
little animals, a little animals.
But just think, we could have no more wars between
Little
people.
people.
Just we can use our military techniques and desires, if we ever have, to kill against animals, so we can have lots of wild animal meat. And we use that all by, first of all, bombarding the sites with missiles.
So remember, it's soil wells. And there's a future. There is a future in soil wells and no more oil. After these 15 years, after we can't afford any more, there's time to develop it. All we have to do is back this business,
And we don't
which
have
in
to have
time
any
will
more,
be coming up.
no more Rockefellers, either Russian or American.